Special webinar that we're running in partnership with Indeed on AI in recruiting within the healthcare industry. My name is Giles Heckstall-Smith. I'm a director here at Jobtrain. For those of you that may not know me or may not know Jobtrain, we provide applicant tracking and recruitment software solutions to a huge range of companies. But very specifically, we support NHS organisations and also wider health and care organisations too. We've been supporting the whole of NHS Scotland, that's all 23 boards with our recruitment platform. We're now working more and more within NHS England as well, or England and Wales too. So that's a quick introduction to me. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Matt Burney and Ryan Blaker from Indeed. Before I do the intros into you two, just want to check that everybody who's joined us this morning can hear us okay and see us all right. If you could just put a little comment on the chat, that would be brilliant. They should come through in a minute. Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. Great. Okay. Thanks, Nisha. Thanks, Alexandra. Super. Thanks, Bella. Right. So without further ado, Ryan, would you like to go first?
Absolutely, thanks, Giles. Yes, nice to meet. Nice to be here, and thanks for having us, Giles. I'm Ryan Blaker, Senior National Account Manager at Indeed. Little bit about me: I've been with the Indeed family for 7 years, and the majority of that time in healthcare recruitment. Initially focusing on the private care sector, and then in the last 3 years, deeply engaged with the NHS. So lovely to be here.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Matt.
Morning, everyone.
Thanks, Giles. Introduction, but perhaps just in this setting, it would be good for everybody to learn a little bit about you and your career and experience so far.
Yeah, to be fair, if you've been in the recruitment industry for a while, the chances are you may have come across me speaking at an event. So my name is Matt Burney. I'm a Senior Strategic Advisor at Indeed. So I'm very lucky that I get to go and work with a really broad range of companies on a number of different subjects. I kind of specialise in two areas. So I very much focus in on things like economic impact and how economics are affecting the world of recruiting. That's one side of what I do, but kind of my biggest area of passion, I guess, has been recruitment technology and particularly new technology. I'm actually one of Indeed's subject matter experts on the subject of artificial intelligence. I've been working in that field for quite a long time. I've been with Indeed about 9 years, or about 25 years in recruitment. I think I started talking seriously about AI in about 2015, when no one really believed me when I was saying all of this is coming. And now, lo and behold, I'm still using presentations from 2015, believe it or not, because people still don't believe everything.
Yeah. I've got a few years on me. I think I describe myself as a 20-year recovering recruiter, having worked in recruitment and then moved into recruitment tech about 20 years ago. Certainly, I don't have anything like the level of expertise you have within AI, so I'm looking forward, along with everybody else, to learning a lot more about how we've arrived at where we are today. And obviously, a lot has changed since the start of this year. I think it was over Christmas that sort of ChatGPT sort of broke to the masses, and people started using it, playing around with it, and that platform and ones like it have moved forward at a pace. In fact, before we came live, Matt was describing some of the new changes, and there's constant upgrades happening to ChatGPT, and the changes are immense in terms of the pace of development and its power. And I think this morning what we want to try and do for everybody here is a bit of an introduction into the world of AI, what it means, in some cases what it doesn't mean, because it's a bit of a catch-all term. It covers a multitude of sins sometimes, or different applications, or different types of technology, and then delve a little deeper into, well, what does it mean for us as recruiters? Is there a threat there? Is it an opportunity? If so, let's be aware of both sides of the coin. And coming away from the session, I hope that everybody here will come away far more informed, with some practical tools and tips of how you might start to harness and use AI within your roles more effectively, or even just full stop, just start using it. And that's probably going to be one of the messages from today. And certainly there's an organisation called the Forum for In-House Recruitment Managers. Now, they just released their annual report just a few days ago. And for the first time, they put a specific focus on AI in terms of asking heads of talent, recruitment managers, and also HR professionals, where are you at with your use of AI at the moment? And this might make everybody feel a little bit better in that pretty much overall, and this against every possible application within recruitment, and we'll delve into that a little bit this morning, probably 10% of people are using AI to some degree to support their recruitment strategy or day-to-day operations and that kind of thing. So that kind of flavors it. A lot of us are just really at the start of understanding how best to harness this technology and use it practically, but also effectively too. Now, Ryan, I know that you've got questions for us.
I do.
I will invite everybody that joined us this morning as well. If you have any questions at all, there is a questions area within here if you're joining us on Crowdcast. And also, please feel free to put any questions, if you like, in the chat as well, and we'll try and pick those up. I'm seeing Nisha, you might not be able to hear us. Sorry, does that apply to anybody else? Can we still be heard by people here? If you could just put a quick message in the chat before we get stuck in, because we don't want anybody to miss out on anything.
Great. Hopefully, yep, there's some people coming back.
All right. It's okay, Ryan. The floor's yours.
Brilliant. Well, it's brilliant to have both of you on with a wealth of experience, not only just in recruitment and technology, but in sort of subject matter experts across AI. And obviously, this is a very hot topic of late. So I'm sure that there'll be lots of questions. If the audience want to put them through into the chat, I'm happy to read them out and ask our guest speakers. And I know that there is a poll also there, so play around with that and share back exactly how you're interacting with AI in recruitment. So, should we kick things off? I'm just going to run this as a bit of a fireside chat. I'll throw the questions out to you and I'll let the two of you give your answers. How's that sound? So I think we should start really just basic and helping the audience understand what actually is artificial intelligence, AI. And that, given you're a subject matter expert, maybe you can kick things off.
So I think it's really interesting that we're talking about AI and we're using a GPT model largely as an example of AI, whereas actually to burst everybody's bubble a little bit, that's not AI. So in essence, though we're talking about AI and it's a very hot topic and we're kind of seeing lots of stuff on the news, it's not actually AI. So to qualify as an AI, a system needs to exhibit some sort of level of learning and adapting properly. So any decision-making systems, automation, and statistical AI aren't actually AI. So if we look at what we're talking about here, there's kind of two categories. So broadly defined, it's kind of narrow intelligence, so artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence doesn't exist. It hasn't happened yet. And that's the idea of something becoming self-aware. And that is true AI. What we're using at the moment is things like large language models, essentially. So ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, any of the other models are available. There's lots and lots of them out there. But all of these things are essentially not necessarily learning models, but they are language models. So they're like predictive text on steroids, most of these things. The volume of stuff that you can put into them kind of dictates how good they are. But if you have to have a human input into them, they're not technically speaking an AI. They're a large language model or a generative model. What they do is fantastic, and they have to an extent been quite limited in the number of inputs that you can put into them. Anyone that's tried to put large documents into GPT-3 or 4 will know the limitations of that. Those limitations are going away. In fact, Giles mentioned earlier, the dev day from OpenAI this week has changed a lot of the parameters. When things are changing over the next few months, we'll see we can put what will amount to essentially 300 pages of a standard book into the GPT model for it to learn from. That coupled with the fact that ChatGPT, which has been limited to data from up to 2021, that's all changing as well, end of this year. So it will be up to April 2023. It'll have all that data in there. But these things are essentially models that we can train and that we can use to give us help and advice. They're not strictly speaking AI.
Yeah. So now we've told everybody that we're going to do a webinar session all about AI. We've burst your bubble, and actually we're going to talk quite a lot about harnessing technology in a really positive way. And this is going to be, we might talk about smart technology, we might even talk about automated intelligence, or intelligence automation, those types of things as we go through. But the simple fact is there are a lot of tools that are available for us to use today that move us forward dramatically from where we were even, let's say, 6-12 months ago.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I mean, given the background that you both have in recruitment and talent acquisition, you likely have seen a major transformation and development, particularly over the last few years, as to how AI has evolved talent acquisition. Are you able to talk about what changes you've seen recently and I guess the advantages it offers over traditional methods?
Giles, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it's as recruiters, it's shifted the dial massively. And I think one of the biggest challenges that recruiters faced was getting their heads around data. There's an awful lot of data that's collected throughout the recruitment process. And one of the first things smart technology has done is allow us to far more easily and readily interpret data in such a way that we can understand it and create actionable insights. And what I mean by that is things like starting to use the data from previous recruitment campaigns to more accurately predict the success or the time taken, all those types of things for future hiring is just one use case. And that's something that we, from an applicant tracking perspective, are now using for our clients. So when you start a recruitment campaign, you can automatically, or based on previous recruitment campaigns, this, I'm going to say, it's probably like to be true, Indeed was your top source in terms of volumes of candidates, but also ultimately the source from where you hired somebody. It took on average this number of days to arrive at a shortlist. So therefore, in terms of expectation management with hiring managers or planning ahead, this is what you should be looking at in terms of a potential time frame, and also maybe where people have even come from in terms of specific employers or geographies and that kind of stuff. So the data can really help us to make a lot more informed decisions, or ultimately has moved us to a place where we're making data-driven decisions rather than gut feel, which has probably happened before that. So that's one use case from my perspective. Another is in terms of really quickly being able to analyze a lot of data in terms of candidate applications. So again, in terms of a practical example, we use technology within our platform, and when you start to create a job, it will automatically search using similar terms, and this is where it starts to use natural language processing a little bit to search all the CVs we currently have, search for similar terms, similar job titles, and then it'll actually automatically surface people and even score them based on their potential relevance based on the basic job details and the job advert or job description. So there's just a couple of practical examples where smart technology or AI is allowing recruiters to cover a lot more data and to save time.
Yeah, I think the data analysis piece is arguably the most powerful that not everybody has tapped into yet. If you look at the sort of burgeoning world of talent intelligence over the last probably 5 years, really, and some of the true leaders in there, if you're interested in talent intelligence, go have a look at Talent Intelligence Collective and what Toby Colshaw's been doing over there. But I think we're moving into an age at the moment where very rapidly companies that perhaps haven't used that intelligence to understand what works, what doesn't work, where good people come from, where potential exists, that's been a difficult thing to do for lots and lots of people for quite a long time. When we look at large language models, natural language models, they can look at those data sets a lot more quickly. They can give you a lot quicker outcomes. And you can start actually understanding where your talent exists, why your talent exists, and how you can actually exploit that talent in the best possible way. Also, for those people that you've got in your business, one of the conversations that I have a lot is that we're not necessarily maximizing potential of the people that we've got that we currently employ. And when we see people that are potentially leaving businesses, why do they leave businesses? A lot of the time people leave businesses because They the old adage of bad management, things like that. That's usually an output from the fact that they're maybe in the wrong job, and we haven't really used data to go and look at what they're good at, what their outcomes are. I'm seeing lots and lots of people looking at where people are actually being really productive, where they're actually obviously applying themselves more, and actually using those data models to actually say, well, perhaps we should put that person over here. That's going to help us in terms of our retention. So there's lots and lots of really interesting stuff. But I think the data piece is the really interesting one in the longer term for most businesses. Where we're seeing lots and lots of people using things right now, I think I'd be surprised if there isn't anybody in the chat who has stuck a job ad into ChatGPT and got GPT to rewrite it for them. If you haven't done that, please go and do it. It's the first thing you should go and do if you work in recruitment. But I'd be amazed if there is anybody that hasn't done that. But I think that's a really, really great use case for people who don't really understand what it can do for them. Very simply, rewriting job ads is a wonderful thing to go and do. Optimizing things correctly and actually understanding what people actually want from job ads are questions you can go and ask of things like GPT or Bard or Bing or whatever model it is you want to use. So there's loads of stuff that you can do. It is fundamentally changing recruiting. There's some existential risk to that. I think we're going to come on to the kind of ideas around existential risk. I'd like to sort of say for the record, I'm pretty optimistic about it. I'm not a doomsayer in all of this, but yeah, I think we probably need to sort of discuss that and kind of address that a little bit.
Well, it's a good segue, Matt. I did want to get onto the whole threat or opportunity conversation. Obviously, we're talking about AI and how it's creating efficiencies in recruitment and the hiring process. Obviously, this is leading to automation of certain tasks, and there is lots of concern around job displacement. I guess I'm very keen to hear both of your thoughts on this space and perhaps like what measures hiring managers can take to prepare their workforce and themselves for these changes.
Yeah, I think it's the existential risk thing. I think, my God, what newspaper for the first half of this year didn't have the world's on fire and the robots are going to kill us all? I think if you worked for Google or Microsoft or DeepMind or anything, and you wanted to go and get a contracting job, all you did was went to every newspaper and said that the world's going to hell in a handcart and it's all AI's fault. I don't necessarily ascribe to that. I think that's a dangerous way to look at anything. But I think whenever anything new comes along, we get the same problem. I'm old enough to have been made redundant by the advent of email in my first ever job. I used to deliver faxes around a building, and when email came in, I essentially lost my job. I remember the internet coming in as well. Everybody said that was going to destroy the world. It didn't. Email didn't destroy the world. The internet didn't destroy the world. For its similar inflection points. So when you think, if you've seen email come about, you've seen the internet come about, you've seen the advent of mobile phones. I remember going to a conference, Mike Taylor's social media and recruitment conference, where I met the woman who was the CEO of YouTube before it was bought by Google. And YouTube was going to change the world. Yeah, and arguably these things have changed the world. All these inflection points do change what we do. They change our industry. They change the way that we work. They do in the short term. Genuinely, there are certain roles that get displaced. It happens. But generally speaking, when technology comes along, it doesn't displace as many people as people think initially. If you look at the early conversations around about 2017, there was a really famous GIF that I use a lot in presentations about how by 2060, everybody's out of work and we're all replaced by robots. If you look at the numbers behind it, it's patently rubbish because we'd all be out of a job pretty much by now anyway. Realistically, what we need to look at is how does automation of any variety, it would be artificial intelligence or just general automation, augment what we do. I think personally, if you look at the world of recruiting, we know we're a very, very inefficient world. We're a very inefficient set of processes because there's lots of manual stuff that goes on. I'm sure Giles can talk about, how you can automate things much better than I can within the kind of processes that Jobtrain provide. But when you look at the jobs that people are hired to do, typically we find that and this is from a survey that we did at Indeed, around about 35% of someone's working week in the world of talent is actually spent on manual processes that they weren't hired to do. We hire people to be great communicators, great connectors of people. We hire people to go and get people who are the right talent for our businesses. Realistically, I think if we can automate, and we probably can already automate that 35%, and we can get people back to doing their jobs, we free up the time for really great recruiters to go and do what we hired them to do. And that's the true advantage that using artificial intelligence gives us that ability to take out inefficiency and provide us with the ways that we can go back to go and do our jobs. The risk in all of that, and I will caveat this and I'll hand over to Giles, but the risk in all of that is that our FD sits there and says, well, you've got 35% more time on your hands, therefore you can take on 35% more work, or you can have 35% less people. That's not the answer. The answer is that for us, as people working in the world of recruiting, is that we now more than ever need to talk about the value that we drive, the value that we deliver, and talk about what it is we were originally hired to do and how much better we can do that for the businesses we work for.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. Yeah. So again, I'm going to go back 20 years to the start of my career within recruitment technology. Jobtrain was a much smaller business. A lot of people weren't even aware of the term applicant tracking system or recruitment software. Sometimes it's called e-recruitment system. And there was this huge fear that the advent of the applicant tracking system as we know it now was going to be a threat to people's jobs. And ultimately it wasn't at all. It was there to take a lot of the heavy lifting out of the recruitment process, and actually fast forward 20 years and very little has changed. The whole idea here is the recruiters should be spending 80% of their time on the top 20% of people that are most relevant for the roles that they're looking to hire or most likely to help the organization grow. That principle has not changed at all. And actually, if we look at AI or smart technology to any degree, it's going to do exactly the same thing. So that's the good news. Is there a threat to recruiters? There's only a threat to those recruiters that aren't able to adapt to this change, harness these tools and start to use them really effectively to basically augment their roles. Now, from a recruiter perspective, ultimately, AI will never replace recruiters in as much as recruitment is, it's a human being industry. It's about people. And it will never show the same empathy or passion or care required to recruit really, really well and also engage with stakeholders effectively. AI can't build relationships with people, which is a huge part of recruiting. It can't yet evaluate cultural fit within an organization, all those soft skills we think about. AI can't sell a job or an opportunity to a potential hire in the same way that a recruiter could. And it will never be able to, well, I say never, certainly right now, it can't influence the hiring process in terms of engaging with hiring managers, leadership, challenging job specs, all those types of things. It simply can't do those things. And where, from my mind, we will see AI grow and help us as recruiters will be very much certainly in the top end of the funnel. So when you've got candidates who are either if you like, passive candidates out there in the market, being able to reach them and engage with them, being able to maintain positive conversations with them or inform them in the form of chatbots and that kind of thing, but really nurturing people. But once it gets to the point of apply, and as a recruiter, you know you're interested in it, it's just going to free up your time to spend an awful lot more time building relationships, those people you want to hire into your organization. And underpinning all of that will be data. So using AI to far more effectively inform recruiters about what is happening in the market, to Matt's point about talent intelligence, and also what's happening within the organization in terms of recruitment effectiveness, skills and people effectiveness, all of those things, and tying all of that together in a far more meaningful way. So for my mind, there's not an existential threat to recruiters out there, but there is a need for all of us to move with the change, and adopt and embrace this technology, get to understand it really closely and find out practical ways in which we can utilize it to make us better recruiters.
Brilliant. Yeah, I very much agree with all of that. We've talked very much from the side of a recruiter. I would like to sort of switch things over and think about from the candidate's perspective. Where do you see sort of the interaction of AI and how it's going to contribute to candidate satisfaction rates and their experience in the recruitment process?
I can't still believe that in 2023, I've got my soapbox here for a second, that, and I hear this all the time, and I have people sit on the webinars and you know, people that have been in and around the recruitment industry for a long time, that about 70% of people that apply for jobs still don't even receive an acknowledgement email. The biggest problem that we have right now is engaging with people full stop, never even mind on a human level. Just treating people with a degree of respect, making sure that they have the information they require at the point of need. So whether that's have you got relevant job opportunities to me? What potential career opportunities might there be for me? Once I've applied for a role, simply setting expectation about what's going to happen during the course of that recruitment process and treating me as a human being. Now, technology should never, ever replace the human element of hiring, but it can be implemented in a really positive way to enhance communication with candidates right the way through the process in a really helpful way. So for me, that is a really important point to make. I think, so from a candidate perspective, I think we should be able to employ this technology in such a way that it helps them and keeps them more informed. But I think that there are barriers that recruiters need to be aware of. And that is that candidates themselves are starting to use AI and ChatGPT in terms of crafting responses to applications, and in various different ways that can actually obfuscate or make the recruiter's life a little bit harder. So I think you just got to be mindful of that.
Matt, we've got you on mute there, I think.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Just instinctively always turn myself on mute just in case. So yeah, look, I think that point around candidate usage is it's a really interesting and slightly contentious area. And I was at an event a couple of weeks back with a lot of very senior leaders, and there was a lot of discussion about whether you should accept people using GPTs to go and write CVs, or whether you should allow people to use any kind of large language model to go and beat a kind of interview process, or even some of the kind of skills assessments. Personally, I'm a believer that yes, you kind of should, because if they're not using it now and your expectation is that they're going to use it in their job, or that your company is going to pivot towards that in the near future, then you really should accept that those people that are good at using that are probably going to be the people you want to hire, right? It's a problem for those companies where you've got large amounts of compliance, but even when you get down to things like a candidate taking a live exam, so say someone has to come physically into your building, go and take a live exam. And I was talking to a company about this literally a couple of weeks ago, and they said that's the way we can get around this. And okay, cool. So are you going to ban everybody who wears glasses from coming into your exams? And they said, well, no, why would we do that? I pointed out that you can already hack Meta glasses. There are the glasses that have GPT built into them. And already you can go and cheat those exams by simply putting on a pair of glasses. So it doesn't really matter what you try and do to mitigate against this. The point here is that you're hiring for people ultimately, and whether those people have actually, gamed the system a little bit to get through an exam or to write a CV or anything else is kind of irrelevant. If you're still good as a recruiter and you're still talking to those people, you still understand who they are, you'll get good people through that process. When you're thinking about once you've got people into that process, and I saw Bella, thank you for your comment on there, your comment about keeping candidates warm during onboarding. It's a problem that I discussed at another event recently as well. And actually we sat down, and it took maybe about an hour and a half to go and build an onboarding process, a pre-employment process that could sit as a Python widget on a company's website. I mean, it's genuinely that easy if you've got assets to start saying, okay, we're going to use a large language model to go and build ourselves a chatbot, go and talk to these people, to integrate things like WhatsApp and go and actually send messages to people and interact both ways with them, is a really, really easy thing to go do. You can go build that yourself quite easily. I say easily, but I sit in that kind of bubble of privilege in that, I spend my entire life looking at all this kind of stuff. But I'm no coder. I don't know how to code. I'm not I'm not built that way. But I can go and build code using ChatGPT, and I can go to AutoGPT to go and build onboarding systems pretty easily. They're not great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not solving all the problems of the world here. But if you want something really simple to go and keep candidates warm, do those kind of pre-onboarding things, then there are stuff that you can do already. Candidates have an expectation of being able to talk to someone or something. And if you look at the data behind people being introduced to chatbots, where the chatbot actually says, hey, I'm a chatbot, and they're honest about the fact they're a chatbot, people are kind of like, cool, I understand. You're not trying to hoodwink me. You're not trying to tell me, my name's Jeff and I'm your recruiter. You're not Jeff, you're not the recruiter, you're a chatbot. But as long as you say, hey, I'm a chatbot, I've got all of these resources, and if you need to escalate something, there'll be a human who can come along and can chat to you. Those are really good uses. And, we have to understand that candidates are going to use large language models to write their CVs. The worry there is that they take the first answer. And I think that's something we should probably talk about, is that, putting in one query, getting a result from any large language model is not going to give you the best result. I've heard lots and lots of recruiters saying, there's lots of CVs if you're in a particular industry that will come back all looking the same because they've literally shoved their CV into GPT. It's just churned out the first one and people have said the first one's fine. That's a problem that will change over time as GPTs and large language models grow. You will see differentiation happen there and people will become more educated over time. Candidates will use GPTs and large language models to help them get through interviews, but they've always done the same thing. If you've been in recruitment for any period of time, Giles, you've been around for probably almost as long as I have in some ways around recruitment. But we all remember, there was a point where you could just say, "Oh, this came from a company called City CV," because they were the biggest CV writers, and they all look the same, they're all written exactly the same way, and that's our top 10% of candidates because they're really, really well done. At the moment, we are seeing that a little bit with people who have paid for GPT-4 versus using GPT-3 as a free version. So you see a slightly better quality of CV, but this is nothing new. The fact that there are people saying, oh my God, there's candidates are going to go out and use a GPT to go and get through our assessment process. Great. Are you aware of how many people are on Fiverr right now who will sit all of your exams for you? They've had to change the way that they talk about that, but they exist. So we need to accept that these things are going to change. They're going to change over time. We are going to have to embrace these as recruiters. We need to understand what candidates are using, but we also need to make sure we interact with candidates the right way. I could go down a lot of rabbit holes here because there's a lot we can talk about. I spoke to Esther Crawford years ago, who was she was a Silicon Valley head of marketing, latterly head of marketing at Twitter, or VP of marketing at Twitter. She created a chatbot to go and talk to all the recruiters that messaged her daily about, does she want a job, because she was very in demand. She created the chatbot, and then within a year, she realized the chatbot was talking to other chatbots. And that's 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So, this stuff has been around for a while, but it's changing a lot over time.
Yeah, if I could just jump in there, Bella, to your point, I think I can help you quite practically on this. If you drop me a line or connect me on LinkedIn, there's a bunch of information I can send to you. We've invested a lot of time. So we were looking specifically at healthcare hiring here. One of the biggest challenges, first of all, is finding and engaging with people. And we're starting to talk about how we can address some of those using smart technology. From an onboarding perspective, it is a big challenge because you've got so many different gates to go through in terms of onboarding and compliance being a really important part of recruiting within healthcare. So yeah, there's some quite practical ways in which you can certainly help keep candidates engaged ahead of them being hired. One of my big arguments here would be, once you've actually identified somebody you want to bring into your organisation, you really do want to be engaging with them on a far more human and personal level. And actually, WhatsApp's a really good way of doing that, because you can use it quite creatively in terms of people sending video messages, or hi from the team, or these types of things. But happy to talk to you separately about that. I noticed, Ryan, that we did have a question in from Lee. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I did see that as well. And sorry, if you're going to answer that, Giles, I'll let you go straight in. I know Matt,
I was actually going to throw it over to Matt, but I'll read it out quite happily. And I think we've kind of started to answer some of this already, but Lee, your question was interested in any thoughts, thanks for bringing it up, on how employers and recruiters can interview and screen effectively when applicants potentially can gain data to answer the questions and come across things like a doctor or a nurse. I'm sure we've all seen videos of people answering video interviews on subjects they know nothing about with ChatGPT on another screen. So yeah, sneaky candidates, and I think actually that's been echoed a little bit by Alexandra said there's a risk with any new technology and how we can tackle the issues about people, both recruiters and candidates in this case, misusing them. Is educating them the solution here, and how can we go about this? Matt, I'm going to throw that one over to you.
I guess the question I'd throw back is, are you aware of Reddit? Because if you've got a recruitment process, I guarantee I can find it on Reddit. I can find the answers to your recruiters' questions are on Reddit right now, along with probably every job offer letter that's been sent out. If they're not on Reddit, they're on Telegram. If they're not on Telegram, they're in WhatsApp groups. So though yes, people are using new technology to go and find information out about things they know nothing about. Yep, I understand that. Surely, though, as a recruiter, you should be able to find that pretty quickly. And I think there's a difference. We've kind of got into the world of asynchronous video interviewing and stuff like that, which is good. It has a real place. But if we're trying to hire people into quite skilled roles where we require some specific knowledge, we should probably be meeting those people or not doing that asynchronously. Also, if you are saying you want to video interview someone remotely and they've got the ability to have a GPT screen there, well, part of the criteria should be you don't get a keyboard in front of you. You should be able to look at those people and have a conversation with them. Obviously, text to speech is a problem there. But realistically, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to find the best candidates. If a candidate is good enough and they augment what they're talking about through the use of GPT, it may purely be because they're not very articulate. And there's kind of nothing wrong with that. It's like somebody rewriting a CV because they're not very good at writing a CV. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. The problem comes if you're trying to go and do something that you're not qualified for. It happens really quickly. I was talking to some people from in the healthcare industry who had interviewed somebody 3 times. And in those 3 interviews, that person was super articulate. They were amazing at the job. They were exactly the right candidate. Their CV looked great. Unfortunately, when they joined, it was a completely different person. They weren't as articulate. They couldn't articulate what it was they were actually doing as a job, and they clearly weren't qualified to do that job. That is, or we thought after a lot of conversation that was purely down to somebody using a large language model to try and game themselves into something. Now, personally, I think the instance of fraud like that at interview stage is very rare. I don't see that as being something that is a very common thing to do. It will always happen, but I think it's always happened regardless of what technology is available. I remember videos from, probably 10 years ago of people with earpieces being coached on video interviewing when video interviewing first came out. There were good examples of that all over the place. So for people who want to defraud you will try and defraud you. And sadly, that is something that will happen. I think realistically, if we're open and honest and we say to people, look, you know, we're either happy or we're not happy for you to use GPTs to help you get through an interview process, then cool, you're being clear about what it is you're accepting and what you're not accepting. And you're putting the expectation on the candidate. I think a good recruiter will spend their time actually talking to that candidate and understanding who they are as much as they will what they're qualified to do. If somebody's sitting there pretending to be a doctor and they're on GPT and they're getting all the answers from that, I think if you meet them, you'd probably know pretty quickly whether they're a doctor or not. So I think that comes down to your recruitment processes as much as anything.
Absolutely, and this plays an awful lot to how using this technology in other areas frees up our time as recruiters to focus a lot more on people. There is a question here from Nyla. Thanks for that. We struggle with candidates complaining the process is taking too long, though we're trying to streamline our process as much as possible. But some things are out of our control, and so we end up losing candidates due to this. So do we think that AI would possibly improve some of these struggles? I'll start answering this, and I will say, and I'm happy to have a chat with you offline based on my knowledge and understanding of recruiting within NHS and healthcare, which is pretty considerable. I could probably start to guesstimate where some of your bottlenecks are and where some of the challenges are. And actually, there's some really simple and effective techniques without using really advanced technology to speed up that process a lot. So happy to chat with you offline. But I think, first of all, you've got to really assess your application process up front. So when people are applying to your roles, how long does that take? How readily can it be done via a mobile phone, for example? You want to keep that as short as possible initially. Then go and ask the other information, things like full employment history, gaps in employment, qualifications, things at a later stage. That can speed up the process really effectively. So does the nature in which you have an agreement with hiring managers around feedback following post shortlisting, interviewing, those types of things. And then finally around onboarding, bringing that whole process online. So it's got full self-service from a candidate perspective, so they can manage and have full visibility and transparency over how they're getting on. And from your perspective, both you as recruiters or HR and hiring managers have visibility and transparency for exactly where each stage of the process is up to. Things like DBS, right to work checks can also be brought online and automated in a really positive way that can help massively reduce that time to hire. Our record with an existing customer of ours, actually outside of DBS, because we can't control that, is 24 hours from the point of issuing a contract to the contract being completed, compliance checks completed, references taken online, the whole thing being done is 24 hours, so it can be done. So happy to chat to you offline about that. Sure, in a couple of years' time, AI might be able to do even more of that in terms of automating processes behind it, but there's certainly some really easy, quick wins for you.
Matt, I'm pretty sure you've told me a few weeks ago the amount of AI solutions and large language models that are being released every day is sort of immeasurable, I should say. I'm sure that there are people working on things like that.
Yeah, I think if a solution provider hasn't already told you that they've got AI in their toolbox, then you know they're probably not a solution provider at the moment, right? But you know, I think when you look at all of this kind of stuff around being attritive against things like time to hire and how we actually engage with people in longer processes, there's lots and lots of conversation around this at the moment. You know, I work with a lot of government and government providers. The worst company that I work with, it's not the worst company, the most difficult company to get through a process that I currently work with, it takes 9 months for you to get a job with them. And that's from offer to start. So when you're thinking about your onboarding process and how long it takes to keep someone warm, bear in mind the pain and suffering of 9 months to get somebody into work.
Wow.
But when you think about the stuff that can be done here, things like reference checking and stuff like that, it's difficult and it's painful at the moment. But when we think about things like blockchain and AI tools that are, you know, we already see people talking about, particularly qualifications, government, things like that. when we're seeing the introduction of blockchain and artificial intelligence into looking at, okay, what is your background? Do you have the right qualifications? Can we get you through DBS? All this kind of stuff. It will undoubtedly speed up. It's not there right now, but even if we look at some of the basic things that were introduced in the last week around, GPT-4, and the new GPT-4, God, I hate saying it, GPT-4 Turbo. Could they not have found a better name? But GPT-4 Turbo, apparently we have to call it. But if you go and look at some of the basic stuff that's been developed around that, when we're thinking about essentially 300 pages of data can go into one query. So if you think about looking at somebody's entire background checking, you could do that very, very, very quickly. Now, we wouldn't want to do that within ChatGPT as it exists right now, but when you look at what OpenAI announced this week, and they said, if you are a company who wants to go and develop an AI to go and do a thing, come and talk to us, and we will talk to you about building a completely private AI that does that for you. Now, in the world of things like reference checking, background checking, compliance, DBS, things like that, I would be extremely surprised if the companies that are involved in that end of the world are not champing at the bit to go and talk to OpenAI. I'm sure Giles is already sitting there thinking, we need to go and chat to OpenAI. Because, why wouldn't you? If you have something that is captive and can go and look at large data sets and is absolutely secure, has no access to anything external, and is compliant around things like GDPR, which is part of what I understand they're building into their model, then why wouldn't we see these things speed up? Why wouldn't we see candidates having a much, much better experience? Because the thing that is taking up the time is essentially taken away. So I'd imagine, by the middle of next year, we will certainly see, if not products around it, we'll see probably a fairly fundamental shift in the time it takes for that sort of thing to actually happen.
Yeah.
I'm conscious here we've got 15 minutes. I've got two questions that I would like to ask. There's a few more questions I'm sure that will come through from our audience. We have touched, I guess, on compliance and the legal implications. We haven't really spoken a lot about ethics, and I'm really interested to hear your opinion on ethics when it comes to AI in terms of, biases, privacy, even promoting sort of diversity and inclusion through the hiring process. Are you able to share your thoughts on that?
In terms of the ethics bit, I'd look to Matt for that. In terms of AI and diversity, there's arguments both ways, but ultimately, if you have an algorithm looking to, for example, reduce unconscious bias in the assessments of candidates, that inherently should be better than a human being making those decisions. The word of caution there is that ultimately the algorithm probably has been written by a human being, so there's always going to be inherent bias in that. But it can help massively in terms of tools, for example, looking at job adverts, job descriptions, and looking for language in terms of potential bias and highlighting that. So that's quite a practical tool that can do some of the heavy lifting of making sure that job adverts and descriptions are inherently, they don't have bias within them. Another area would be things like standardizing interview questions. Because again, if they're generated from a hiring manager, for example, they can inherently include bias. But if they're generated via an AI, then for the most part, those elements can be removed. And that's certainly something that we're playing with. So in terms of automatically generating assessment questions from a job description, job advert, that kind of thing. And that's something that we'll be sort of introducing within our platform from next year. And then finally, if you're looking at overall goals around things like diversity, then certainly analysing large models of data in order to inform recruiters, inform leadership about the patterns that exist within an organisation, and also the recruitment funnel can help massively in terms of having a far better handle on are we recruiting in a diverse and fair way. Also, smart technology and AI can help us massively to reach a far wider pool of diverse candidates rather than those that we might typically be engaging with and reaching.
Yeah, I think, to kind of wind back a little bit from to an extent from the world of recruiting, really, just to kind of talk about what AI ethics are and why ethics are important. AI is something that not a lot of people truly understand, and they don't understand it because trust is actually relatively low, and there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there. There's kind of public fear about misuse, big companies with minimal accountability, all that kind of thing. But I think we kind of need to look at how do we change that narrative? How do we kind of put trust back into what we're doing from an AI point of view? You know, we said earlier about the whole, you know, terrifying news headlines, which are kind of not what we want. So there's really 4 ways that we want to think about ethics within AI. So transparency is very, very, very important. So if you're using an AI tool, whether it's generative AI, large language model, whatever it is you're using, actually giving people an explanation about how that works, you know, what its limitations are, what its biases are, and actually empowering your users to understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. That goes for those people that work for you, who are going to interact with that tool. Again, going back to that kind of existential dread bit, you know, we need to explain to people what this does and why it does it. To an extent, you need to do that to candidates as well, because there are some real misconceptions out there. If you look at, there was a big survey done about 3-4 months ago. I forget the name of the company, but they looked at 1,000 millennial candidates for jobs and actually asked them about, do you believe that AI makes the decision about whether you get hired or not? And 78% of people in the millennial category said, yes, AI is already making that decision about whether I got hired or not. It's complete rubbish, because there isn't a single tool out there that makes the final decision about whether you get hired or not. So that shows that we don't have the transparency that we should have. And companies that are employing AI really should actually explain to candidates, yes, it might be involved in sifting a CV, but it doesn't make a final decision, which comes on to that piece about explainability. You've got to make its decisions understandable. So whether we're talking about significant decisions or minor decisions, whether it's job applications, healthcare, financial matters, you know, the impacts are pretty far reaching. So I would actually get the AI to explain itself. You know, if you're looking at justifications for decisions around bias, data training, revealing bugs, things like that, it's a really good thing, a good practice to do, to go and actually ask AI what its limitations are, and explain what it can and can't do. Go to GPT and ask that question. It's really good at telling you what it does and what it doesn't do. The next bit around control, we should have control over our data. You know, Cambridge Analytica was a big thing. We all kind of know that. Data collections are kind of slippery slope, so you need to be really clear about what data is being opted in, what's being opted out. If you are using an AI to go and look at data, you need to understand the limitations of that. The final part, I guess, around engagement is making sure that you build trust. So encouraging users to actually engage with AI and actually saying to them, this is how you engage with it, this is why you engage with it. That can be done both from an internal point of view and from an external point of view, because, you know, ultimately, if you're using it to make decisions about candidates, or you know, candidates are using it to go and get through your system, it is influencing your system. So you need to actually go and talk about that. The AI ethics piece is a really, really, really deep rabbit hole. It's a really important one. I always say to people that, you know, there's automation for good, there's automation for bad. Just doing automation isn't necessarily the right thing. You need to understand why you're doing it and what the outcomes are of that before you start, you know, engaging in new technology or new tools.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. I can see, I've got a couple of questions through, haven't we?
We do. I'm sure we probably needed more time to get through this as the questions start filtering in. I'm just going to go back up here. So Alexandra has also just talked about, is this more a robotic processing automation thing rather than artificial intelligence? And could you explain maybe the difference and the relevancy?
I don't know that one. Yeah, but there's a distinct difference between the two. RPA, or robotic process automation, is really just automating tasks or processes within, you know, any kind of piece of technology. And a lot of that can be based on simple things like rules. So if this happens, then do this. If this happens at this point, then do this. And that exists pretty widely within a lot of systems that we use day to day. That can be something as simple as sequences within CRM if we're looking to send out email communications and those types of things. It doesn't have to be a lot more sophisticated than that. It is still an application of smart technology that helps reduce a lot of time around admin and things. But that's pretty much the extent of it, unless, Matt, you want to challenge me on that response.
Not really, no.
Okay, I'm safe.
You kind of nailed that.
With the last 5 minutes, I'd love to give people some actionable steps to take away from this. So, just from your opinion, where should people really start when they're looking to upskill in this whole age of AI?
Well, I think that the overarching thing here is, and we've talked about the kind of fear piece. Don't be scared of it, because it's here, and frankly, we are, as I said earlier, this is another inflection point. We're going to talk about the world pre and post the advent of large amounts of access to generative AI, to LLMs, GPTs. So we're in the world where you have to embrace this. If you're not going to embrace this, you are going to get left behind. That's the kind of sad reality here. If you're not already playing with things, then go play. But be aware that if you're just doing things like you're putting a job description or a job ad into a large language model, and you're getting an output from that. Firstly, as we mentioned earlier, don't take the first answer. That's a really, really bad way to do things. If I look at the way that I go and build prompts within using any large language model, typically I'll be probably about 10 to 15 prompts before I get an answer that I actually like from it. Me why that answer is good, and actually get it to explain itself. And that's a really good discipline to have, because it helps you understand how to build complex queries, but also how to get a tool to go and build that query for you and explain itself. Other things that I think are really fantastic that people don't do enough of is to go and look at large documents. We've probably got lots of people from the NHS on here. Last time I did an NHS event with Ryan, he mentioned the NHS framework document. Wow, that's fun, isn't it, for all of you on here? For anyone that's read that, it's got 134 pages of some of the dullest stuff that I've read, but I got through it. How did I get through it? I uploaded it to Bing, and I said to Bing, could you read this entire document for me? Explain to me what every part of this is actually about. Tell me what every chapter is about. Give me citations and quotations to prove that you've actually read this, and tell me in an overarching way what this means for recruiting. And it did a really wonderful job of doing that and saved me an enormous amount of time for something that, arguably for my job, I don't need to go and read the whole thing. Large documents, large data sets, things like that. If you don't need to go and read every aspect of this, use a large language model to go and do that for you. These are the really simple things that you can go and do right now that will give you a really, really great outcome and will actually make your day better and more efficient. Things like writing emails. Some of us are very bad at writing emails. If you need to go and write an email, put some bullet points into GPT and get it to write the email for you. Stuff like that, real basic stuff. But remember, if you're doing basic stuff, it's still not really a tool, it's a toy. But once you've got to a point where you're comfortable with it, start thinking about how do I turn this into a tool? And that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I echo everything that Matt said. Just get started with it. To help practically with that, I could probably go on, but I'm conscious of time here. If you look directly under Matt, there's a link there, everybody, to tools and resources. We put together a whole list of different links and resources that you can start. They'll get you started with using ChatGPT, make you more aware of AI, its practical uses, and that kind of stuff. Some of this shamelessly stolen from Hung Lee's Recruiting Brain Food series. I would actually advise you go out and check Recruiting Brain Food online. Hung Lee, who hosts the show and also curates a lot of the content. There's a load of AI resources on there. I've condensed some of those into some tools and tips for you. So I hope you find that of value. But if not, go and search, go and read around it, go and talk to colleagues, get involved in LinkedIn online, go and follow Matt because he talks about AI an awful lot, which is another good way of getting more au fait with it as well. And Stephanie, thank you so much for your comment there, that you are now training managers on how to use AI in advert writing and developing interview questions. It's a positive step forward. So that's quite very innovative. So glad to hear that. And I guess Ryan, Matt, we're probably starting to wrap this show up, which is a shame because I feel like we probably could have gone on for a lot longer. Part of that is thanks to everybody here for all of your questions. It's been great to get so many questions. We really collectively hope that you've got value from today's session. If you've got any feedback, thoughts, you want more, let us know, connect with us. And it's more than likely we're going to arrange some more of these types of sessions specifically for the NHS and healthcare. Collectively with Indeed and Jobtrain, we've got a huge passion for making NHS recruitment and hiring far more effectively and supporting you all with that. So if there's anything either related to AI or outside of that you want any help with, then please do come and talk to us. We are here to help. So thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope you have a great day and a great week for that matter, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
Cheers.
Thanks, Giles. Thanks. Bye.